You know how disturbing that is to me?
Who said that?
I can't tell you. He knows who he is.
Don Charles came out swinging, and it wasn't just at Daniel Dubois' performance against Oleksandr Usyk, it was at his entire character. He made it crystal clear that he would never stand in the corner of someone he believes is a quitter. After what he described as a shameful collapse in the ring, Don Charles was done for good. The veteran trainer split with Dubois permanently, calling him a disgrace to real fighters and an insult to the sport of boxing. But just when the situation...
When we get something wrong, when I get my job wrong, I get the sack. I get sacked. I get fired.
Seemed like it couldn't get more savage. The firestorm grew even larger. Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren entered the scene, and they didn't hold back either. The tension had been brewing for a long time, but now it was all spilling into the open. Don Charles had been publicly disrespected by Dubois and his father in the build-up to the Usyk fight, and now he was getting the last laugh.
Stan Dubois, Daniel Dubois' father, and Don Charles have had a massive fallout, and he won't be in the corner.
Absolute, complete and utter rubbish. The absolute and utter garbage.
Honestly, nothing really. People keep talking about if Daniel will deal with the occasion, the emotion, the trainers, the dad. It don't matter. He's going to make a load of mistakes, but he's going to be really dangerous. If he had no trainer, if it was just him and his dad, I think it would be the same fight.
Hearn and Warren, two of the biggest power brokers in boxing, ripped into the situation, calling the entire fiasco absolute rubbish. They made it clear that Dubois had only himself to blame. He had frozen under pressure on the biggest stage, been embarrassed in front of the world, and still had the audacity to blame others. That defeat wasn't just a loss, it was, in their words, a full-on beat.
Him, because I said, this man's like a chameleon. Changes colors to fit in within, infiltrate his environment. He knows that will suss him. All that acting games and that, he uses it as a smoke screen to cover what's actually really going on. I'm not going to elaborate.
That stripped away the illusion surrounding him. Don Charles didn't sugarcoat it. He tore into Dubois' mentality, comparing him to a chameleon who hides behind fake personalities and rehearsed emotions. He was basically calling Dubois a fraud, a fighter who blends in just to survive, not to fight. Charles accused him of playing games, leaning into drama, and even producing fake tears when it suited him. After that devastating loss to Usyk, Don Charles said the mask had finally shattered and the world had...
Well, yes, I did think it was a certain shock in some ways because they've been together so long and you're used to them being together.
Seen the real Daniel Dubois for what he was. The reaction from inside the boxing world was equally sharp. Even Gareth A. Davis, one of the most respected voices in the sport, was stunned by the split. Given how long Dubois and Charles had worked together, the breakup shocked many, but to Gareth it spoke volumes. He admitted that if Don Charles had chosen to walk away...
Instinctively, what I thought straight away, more could come out, they might have fallen out over something, I don't know, but it's not likely because they get on so well. People will say, oh, is that disloyal of the fighter? But this is a money bit.
After years of loyalty and effort, something serious must have gone wrong. This wasn't about one bad fight. This was about a deeper problem. The split, according to insiders, was pure rejection. Don Charles wasn't just changing trainers. He was cutting ties with someone he believed was mentally fragile and unworthy of the loyalty he had shown for years. Something stinks, Gareth A. Davis remarked, openly questioning what line Dubois must have crossed for a seasoned trainer like Charles to finally walk away. And then Frank...
A couple of times over the years where, you know, for various reasons, you get pissed off or you don't have an argument, anything. Yeah, that's happened in
Warren stepped forward, adding even more fuel to the fire. He revealed how badly the trust and chemistry between Dubois and his camp had broken down long before the Usyk fight. Warren hinted that the split didn't happen overnight. This was the result of years of arguments, quiet tension, and a camp where people were walking on eggshells. He pointed out that Dubois had a pattern of mentally folding long before the bell rang in Poland. Warren didn't say it directly, but the message was clear. Daniel Dubois was unstable. He was a fighter who had failed to build the mental strength required at the highest level. Adola Charles's tone in interviews said it all too. He tried to remain neutral, but even he couldn't hide his shock. The truth was simple. This wasn't just another coach-fighter argument. This was the implosion of a hype job. Dubois didn't just lose a fight to Oleksandr Usyk. He lost the respect of his trainer, the trust of his team, and the belief of the fans. WW Charles didn't leave over boxing tactics or a bad game plan. He left because Daniel Dubois, in his eyes, had exposed himself as a mental man.
There always seems to be issues with fighters and managers. It just seems to be part of the course. But I don't think it's that with these two. I don't. I'd love to kind of like give you the reasons as to why, and I've made a phone call and I know the answers, but honestly, I don't. It does surprise me.
A fragile fighter who couldn't handle pressure, couldn't take criticism, and definitely couldn't be trusted in the heat of battle. And the hits kept coming. Even Dubois' younger sister, Caroline Dubois, a rising star in her own right, turned on him publicly after the Usyk loss. This was perhaps the most brutal moment of all. When your own blood calls you a disgrace, there's no defending it. Caroline didn't hold back. She called out her brother's performance as embarrassing, heartless, and shameful. There was no pride, no courage, no fire. Just a man who, in her words, quit when it got too real. Caroline saw through all the excuses, all the fake debates about the supposed low-blow body shot and the post-fight theatrics. She said what fans were screaming: Daniel Dubois doesn't have the heart of a true fighter. And when your own sister, someone who knows the sacrifices, the training, and the weight of the family name, calls you out in front of the entire boxing world, it cuts deeper than any jab. Caroline's words left Dubois with no defense. You can lose a belt and still be
obviously, there's no pretend. The man is supremely talented, but time and season is everything in this
respected. But when your family distances themselves from you, you've lost everything. Dave Allen, the popular heavyweight who doesn't mince words, also weighed in, and he didn't sugarcoat it either. What he said next was pure public execution. Allen called out what millions of viewers had seen with their own eyes. Dubois wasn't knocked out, he checked out. He pointed out that Dubois got up after the final knockdown with no wobble, no panic, and no visible pain. He just strolled past Usyk like he was walking through a park on a Sunday afternoon. That wasn't the behavior of a warrior. That was the behavior of a man desperate for an escape. Allen's brutal line about Dubois being on the quit committee hit harder than Usyk's jab because it rang true. This wasn't an isolated incident. It had become a pattern. When adversity hit, Dubois didn't dig deep. He ducked out. That moment against Usyk didn't just confirm that he lost the fight. It confirmed he might not be cut out for the top level of boxing.
The count of 10, and he walked straight past Usyk, straight to the corner. It was completely fine. I think... And you know what? It's horrific to say I've quit. It's not horrific to say I'm quit. I'm chairman of the quit committee. I'm top quitter, I guess. Anyway, he quit. Yeah, he did.
Boxing. Allen said what many fighters were thinking but were too polite to voice. Dubois has a quitting problem, and in boxing, that is a permanent stain you don't wash off. Then came Martin Bakole, and he took the gloves completely off. He dragged Dubois through the mud with no filter, and he was unapologetic about it. Bakole had predicted before the fight that Dubois wouldn't last 5 rounds, and he was proven right, but he didn't stop there. Bakole accused Dubois of refusing to evolve as a fighter. He said Dubois still had no jab, no adjustments, and no hunger to improve. It was just the same rinse and repeat mediocrity until someone eventually knocked him out again. Bakole didn't just clown Dubois. He said Dubois deserved the beating he received. Why? Because he brought nothing new to the table. Same predictable blueprint, same soft heart, same fake toughness. Meanwhile, Bakole pointed out Usyk was out there beating legends and conquering divisions. Dubois, on the other hand, was collecting paychecks and losses. Bakole's words weren't just trolling, they were the echo of a truth that everyone in the...
I said it before the fight, even today, that Daniel Dubois would never pass 5 rounds if he kept boxing like the same way he boxed last time he fought Usyk. But he did the same. There was no jab, nothing changed. He deserved the knockout because he never changed something like supposed to.
Division understood. Dubois wasn't feared, he was figured out. The formula to beat him was simple. Wait for the moment he mentally checks out, then finish him off. Easy work. And to really underline the point, Bakole shifted his tone completely when speaking about Usyk. He went from mocking Dubois to praising Usyk like a machine. That contrast showed the enormous gap between the two fighters. While Dubois was collapsing under pressure, Usyk was rising to greatness. Bakole called Usyk untouchable, elite, clinical. He dismantled Dubois without even needing to switch gears. And then came Tony Bellew with a reality check that hit like a sledgehammer. Bellew mocked the idea that Dubois had even landed a meaningful body shot in the fight. He said Usyk didn't flinch. He laughed at it, and Dubois had nothing else to offer after that. Bellew nailed it. The real Daniel Dubois doesn't want to fight. When things get tough, he checks out. This wasn't a one-time fluke. It was a pattern that had followed him his entire career. When Joe Joyce broke his eye socket, Dubois looked...
It's the best for right now. For this moment now is the best. Retire or keep fighting. He done amazing. This guy is a machine. So it's the best right now, to be honest. So is still undefeated.
For the exit. Against Usyk, the same story played out again. Bellew wasn't trying to be personal. He was being honest, and that's why it stung more. Coming from a former world champion and a real warrior, the truth was undeniable. Dubois has all the physical tools, size, power, and athleticism, but none of the heart and hunger. And at this level, you can't fake grit. You either have it or you don't. Bellew sees through the PR machine and the excuses. What he sees is a fighter who doesn't want to suffer. And in boxing, that's not just disappointing, it's career-ending. Johnny Nelson piled on as well, not just questioning Dubois' mentality, but tearing apart every weapon in his arsenal. Nelson laid it out cold. Usyk didn't just beat Dubois, he dismantled him layer by layer. He took away the jab, neutralized the power, exposed the footwork, and shattered the confidence. By round 5, Dubois was already sitting on the canvas, staring up like a schoolboy lost in a war zone. This wasn't a competitive fight, it was a clinical demolition. Nelson painted the picture of a man who entered the ring hoping to survive, not win. Usyk didn't even break a sweat. He barely left third gear, yet he made Dubois look like a confused amateur. And worse still, Usyk remained
And one decent body shot the whole fight, to which Usyk tapped his belly and just said, "What was that?" And then there was zero else coming back. And that's, in my opinion, that's the attitude and that's the mentality of a guy that when the going gets tough, he doesn't want to fight. And he never changed.
Posed and classy, even after dishing out the punishment. Dubois, meanwhile, sat in disbelief, clueless, broken, and mentally finished. Nelson didn't sugarcoat it. Dubois had been stripped of every attribute that once made him dangerous. By the end of the fight, he wasn't just physically beaten, he was spiritually erased. That's what happens when an elite boxer meets someone built on hype with no foundation. Dubois didn't just lose the bout, he lost every ounce of credibility he had left. Now, as the dust settles, Daniel Dubois stands as the most talked about collapse in modern heavyweight history. Not because of who beat him, but because of how easily he gave it all away. He was once marketed as the future of British boxing. But what's left now is a shell of that hype buried under the shame of quitting and the thunderous sound of every voice from Don Charles to Tony Bellew calling him out. This wasn't just a loss, it was a meltdown witnessed by the world. Don Charles walking away didn't just signal a split, it was a public rejection of a fighter who showed zero heart when it mattered most. Frank Warren knew the breakdown was coming. Gareth A. Davies saw the fractures. Even Caroline Dubois, his sister, has seemingly washed her hands of him. This is what happens when a fight...
What he did to Daniel, it took away everything, all his attributes. He took away his jab, took away his power, took away his movement, took away his confidence, to the point where Daniel was putting his backside on the floor thinking, wow, you know, we're only in round 5 here and I'm getting chopped up. This guy
builds a career on power but lacks grit. Meanwhile, Oleksandr Usyk continues to write history, and the rest of the heavyweight division moves forward without Dubois even being part of the conversation. The truth is, no one fears Daniel Dubois anymore. They mock him, and unless he reinvents everything from his mindset to his mechanics, this fall from grace could be permanent. Boxing doesn't forgive weakness, especially when it's displayed on the biggest stage. The question now isn't if Dubois will come back, it's whether anyone even cares. Are you backing Don Charles and Team Usyk as they stay dominant? Or do you think Daniel Dubois can pull off a miracle and change the narrative? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this story is far from over.